Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be doing the rest of the mini set card reviews today. There's a lot of cards to get through, so let's get to it. First up we have for DK and Pardon, Cold Feet. 2-mana spell. Any minions cost 5 more next turn. Also Frost. Very similar to a card in the past we've had, which was Rebuke, which was a 2-mana spell that did the same thing, but it made spells cost more. At the time, people thought that was going to be really good because it had the same text as Lotheb, but it turns out it just wasn't. It wasn't really played in any decks whatsoever, and it didn't really have the same effect that Lotheb did because Lotheb came with a 5/5 body, so it was a lot higher value of a card. So yeah, that was a big surprise back then for a lot of people, and going off that, maybe this card's not going to be that strong. Enemy minions costing more than spells is actually a bigger deal, I'd say. If you can look at a card like Akani or Objection, they tend to be a bit stronger than when Akani picks minions, and Objection is a bit stronger than Counterspell. So you could imagine this is a bit stronger than Rebuke, though we are a long way away from Rebuke in terms of Hearthstone's timeline. I don't think many decks are going to want to be playing this card. It's just a bit too low value. The benefit of it really is it can kind of ramp you to your later turns if you're against an aggressive deck. You play this on turn 2 and they can't delete their 3-drop, for instance. It saves you a bit of time. So decks that would maybe be interested in doing that would be Big Paladin or Blood DK. Those are the ones that really want to be ramping towards the late game. I don't know if Blood TK really wants to be running this, and they might just kind of run out of value if they've got cards like this in their deck. It can buy them some time against aggressive decks, but because their win con's largely like attrition based, they do need to like kind of beat the value as well. So delaying your opponent isn't necessarily going to help them that much. For Big Paladin, however, it could help them because they do suffer a lot against early boards. Before they can get their things online, they are going to be struggling. So maybe they can consider running this card just as a bridge to get towards their later turns a bit easier. Because they really don't do too much in the early game. They just play like muster for battle if they happen to draw it. Otherwise, they just kind of don't do a whole lot. So maybe Big Paladin could consider this card. Other than that, it's probably just going to be an annoying one to be discovered off Teacher and Vizier for a lot of decks. And that's probably the main time you're going to be seeing it. Next, we have Dead Air. This is a 2-mana spell for DK. It's Frost and green. Destroy your undead, resummon them. I don't know why this is a Frost and green. It feels like a bit unnecessary to make it one of each for this kind of card. It doesn't seem particularly strong. Destroying your undead and resummoning them. It can be useful if you've got eggs on the board, or if you're trying to do a combo with maybe Cage Head. But why does it have to be a Frost and green? This is just a bit of a weird requirement to me for a card that doesn't seem overly powerful. You can compare it maybe to Unholy Frenzy. Unholy Frenzy is not a very good card, but situationally good. This has a better effect if your opponent has a board, because you get to kill their board as well, and resummon things that aren't undead too. Dead Air only affects undead minions, doesn't damage your opponent's board. So in pure tempo terms, it's like quite a bad card. But there is like a combo you can do with it. Namely, Cage Head, which you can still run. You have to go 2 green, 1 blue. Run Cage Head. Once this dies, you're going to get your 9/9, right? And then you can play... I guess I don't even own the card. Bone Shredder, which Spends 5 corpses to trigger and gain the death rattle random friendly minion that died this game. Now this isn't undead. And the boar that Cagehead summons as well is also undead. So this will summon a 9/9 and have the death rattle summon a 9/9 with charge. So you send the 9 face and then you play Dead Air and it's gonna give you 2 more 9/9s that can hit face. So 27 face damage potentially. Combo Dead Air and Bone Shredder, which is good, but the problem is really with the deck is getting to the Cagehead and surviving and playing this and drawing this in time and doing all that lovely stuff and not losing the game up to that point. But yeah, cool combo. There might be some other stuff outside of this that not considering, but that's the one that springs to mind to me. Not gonna spend too much time on this card. It's just like probably bad, and the rune requirement is a bit baffling to me. Like it's not making me want to play Rainbow. Anyway, moving on. We have Kugel. This is a DK and Paladin card. 4-mana 3/1 undead, Divine Shield Reborn. Very, very sticky card against minion trades. Extremely sticky. Takes 4 attacks to get through it, which you can compare maybe to other 4-drops, and it's going to do a better job of staying on the board. But compared to other 4-drops, it's got a lot less utility, it's got less attack. I mean, in DK alone, they have quite a lot of good 4-drops. They won't be playing this one. Very good. This one's very good. They have School Teacher's also very good. So you're kind of getting a bit too crowded in the 4-drop slot, and I don't think this one's stronger than any of them. This card's also kind of a bit weak to science effects, for one thing, which is going to hurt the card as well. In Paladin, I also kind of don't think they want this card that much. They do have Divine Shield synergies within Paladin. They have Jitterbug, they have Funkfin as well. But the problem is, in pure Paladin decks, you don't really want expensive cards. You want to be as cheap as you can, really. That way you're discounting your light rays. And then you can do your swing turn a bit earlier. When you have a card like this, it's just a bit clunky. It only got 3 attack. Doesn't do any other effects. It's just going to be on the board, kind of sticky. But that's it. And I think that's a bit too weak for modern Hearthstone. Plus it's a bit weak to like silence effects as well. Okay. I don't think it's good. We're going to move on to Tough Crowd. This is Demon Hunter / Rogue. Outcast, return a minion to its owner's hand. It's a demon, 3-mana 2/1. This is a bit too expensive to be played on its own, I think. It's like kind of like hard removal for Demon Hunter, which they haven't really had in the past, so that it's filling a niche there. But I don't think you want to be running this in your deck just because it's not always going to be Outcast. Some decks also are Demon Synergy decks like Big Demon Hunter, which can't run this. Relic Demon Hunter and Outcast Demon Hunter probably don't want to run this either. It does have Outcast on the card, but Outcast Demon Hunter has already kind of does a decent job of being on the board, so it doesn't really need this effect to deal with the opponent's minions usually. For Rogue, I think it is also a bit too expensive. They have benefit that they can Shadow Step this card. And then once it's Shadow Stepped, it's in the Outcast position for 1. It can sap some more things from your opponent. That sounds alright. Maybe for a slower Rogue. The Miracle Rogue and things, I don't think they need this effect. Particularly, they can just get by with concoctions to deal with big minions most of the time. This looks mainly as honestly, a weakening to random Outcast generation, like failing. and the 2-drop that generates outcast cards. For studies, it's situationally quite good for studies. Already going to be in an outcast position, so when your opponent's just made like a massive minion, and you get this from studies, you're going to be pretty happy. So I don't think it's a weakening of studies. You're going to find some of the other more generally useful things a bit less often, but this being in the pool as like an out for certain situations is going to be pretty handy. But I don't imagine this is going to see that much play within decks. Now, some people are like saying this should probably be 2 mana, and I agree. If you want to make the card competitive in terms of playing it in decks, 2 mana seems reasonable. But the fact that studies can get it and Phelan can get it, I don't feel like making it 2 mana is very healthy for the game, because it's just a bit too swingy of a card at 2 from those 2 cards, and maybe a little bit too good. But for 3, I don't imagine many decks can be playing this card. Next, we got Remix Rhapsody. This is another remix card. Deal 3 damage to all minions, gain an extra effect that changes each turn. We have draw 3 cards. We have deal 3 damage to all minions twice. Give you a hero +5 attack. Summon a 5/5 demon. So these are all actually pretty good. You don't need AoE as much in Demon Hunter because you have the Reno combo of the spell power Unleash Fel for turn 6. So sometimes it's actually kind of bad to clear off a board that would die to deal 3, because you want to kind of get the healing off it on the turn after. So it's not really a hole that Demon Hunter necessarily needs to be filled, unless there's so much flooding effects, or if the flooding effects are a bit too early for your Unleash Fel combo, that you really need this effect. But in terms of raw card strength, it's pretty good. Most of them are nice. If it does clear the board, draw 3, a lot of value. +5 attack. 5/5. I mean, a lot of these are just like, other than the deal 3 twice, are just good value. So even in slower matchups, they might be reasonable to play. It does hurt your own side of the board, which the Unleash Fel combo does not. So there is a bit of downside there. But I imagine the deck this runs in isn't going to have a board they want to snowball as much when playing this. 5 mana is a lot, it's a bit clunky. This might just be like a card that's good, but doesn't have a home. Big Demon Hunter might want to run this. I could see it, because they don't actually have as many early ways to contest board as Relic Demon Hunter has, or other Demon Hunters. So in terms of needing an AoE before their big swing, they're going to need it a bit more. Now, this does summon a demon, which can hurt their demon pool a little bit, but I don't think that's too much of a problem. I think Big Demon Hunter might want this effect, just because I've had games playing the deck where you need to do an AoE early, but you don't want to use the Unleash Fel combo because then you don't get the healing later. So I could see it in that deck for sure. Strong card, but it might just be a bit outclassed by a better AoE. We've got Rhythm Dancer Risa. 5 mana 3/5 rush. After your hero attacks, return this to your hand and set its cost to 1. So this is like kind of infinite value card, but in order to get going, you need to have a 5 mana tax to begin with. 5 mana deal 3, and you need to be able to swing with your face, either in Rogue or Demon Hunter. For Demon Hunter, there are some weapons available that you could run to enable it. And for Rogue, you need to have your dagger up. You could also hero power as Demon Hunter, but it'll cost you extra mana. I don't think this is like that crazy good. It's an expensive initial effect, for one thing. And then you got to spend 1 mana every turn, and the stats that you have on the board afterwards they don't really stay. You get to basically deal 3 to a minion every turn, as long as that minion has 4 attack or fewer. Because if it's a 5/5, you don't actually get to hit into it and bounce this back because your minion dies. So it's not quite infinite value, but maybe a deck like Secret Rogue, which tends to be a fairly attrition based, would not mind a card like this. Don't know how much they like daggering up. They have lots of secrets and things, so they kind of spend their 2 mana on that instead. So even setting this up is slightly awkward for that deck because the dagger's just not going to be up most of the time. How good even is it to deal 3 every turn? It has to be to a smallish minion anyway. Big things just don't get affected by this at all. They don't really care. I think it's a little bit too expensive. If it's 4 mana initial cost, sure, but 5, I just don't really see decks trying to play it. Miracle Rogue definitely not going to play it. I think most Demon Hunter decks are not going to play this either. Yeah, I think just maybe Secret Rogue could consider it. Alright, next we have Popular Pixie. 2 mana, 2/3, choose one. Refresh your hero power, or your next one costs 0. So this is the Druid card for the set. So Tour Guide effect, already kind of decent in Druid. Tour Guide's not really run, but it's not an awful option within your deck if you're going for the hero power route. This is slightly better, I think, being on 2 mana 2/3 than a 1 mana 1/1. Plus we have this bonus effect, refresh your hero power. So later on you could maybe weave it in twice on a turn if you're running low on gas, or you need extra face damage or extra armor that you don't have in your other cards. Quite expensive to do that, it's like 6 mana. But if you got like deal 5, gain 5 as your hero power, then it's pretty much worth it to do that. For like Zoc Druid and things, I don't think this is really a slam dunk card to go in the deck because they don't actually use their hero power all that often. They just kind of use it to fill some turns and use the early minions to contest board a little bit. This is actually, it's going to be good for a deck like Drum Circle Druid, which has its big combo. It runs a lot of early game minions, and this one will fit in quite nicely with them. And if the combo doesn't win them the game, they're kind of reliant on hero powers to close out the game, particularly against slower decks like Priest or Blood Decay. They rely a lot on that damage from the hero power to get there. And this will help them quite a bit, just getting to weave an extra hero power on one turn. Or late game double hero power to do a lot of face damage. Means this will definitely be good in that deck, but other druids maybe not crazy amount. It's possible we could see Druid go in a direction where they rely entirely on the hero power and not play much late game things and just be more of a smork deck. And this will certainly help it because between 2 of these in the deck, you can actually get there a lot of the time just hero powering your opponent in the face. I think it's a solid card. Next we have Blood Treant. Oh boy. 5 mana, 2/2, cost health instead of mana. Now this, to me, obviously is crap. It's way too much health for +1/+1 on a Wisp, really. To begin with. I think to me this is a relic of a weird design route. So recently cards have been changed so that things that cost health do not let me phrase this again. If you have immune, things that say cost health, they do not you do still take the damage even if you're immune. So things like Blood Commander, or whatever it's called in Paladin, if you're immune there and you still take the damage. that sort of thing. And there's 2 cards in Warlock right now which care about you damaging your face. One, Void Virtuoso during your turn, your hero is immune, and the second one being Fellstring Harp, whenever your hero would take damage on your turn, restore 2 health instead, and lose 1 durability. So these 2 cards actually do not work with this Blood Treant. You still take the 5, even if you're immune, even if you have the harp up, because you're not technically taking damage anymore. This just costs health. Same thing if you had Jailer up or something like that. This still would damage you, which I think is kind of a silly change, because cards like this become very unintuitive. Like, you start thinking, why am I taking damage? Like, you would expect you not to take damage. Blah 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 blah. The reason I think that it's happened is because of Stealer of Souls rotating to Wild. I think that's causing problems. Going back to 4-mana 2/6, I think they want this plus Finley. They don't want it to be crazy with like the Void Virtuoso. Something like that. So I think that's the reason why they've done this change. And it's kind of hurt the rest of the cards because of it. And I think also intuitive wise, it just doesn't make too much sense. Like, you would expect this not to damage your face if your hero was immune. But anyway, how good is this card? In Warlock, I feel like it's just not playable at all. For Druid, there is some application in that it does proc the Timber Tambourine 1 time for 0 mana. I don't think that's a good enough reason to play the card though. Like, taking 5 and playing the Tambourine. No, don't think we want to do that. Maybe there's a very, very aggressive Druid deck, like a tokeny Druid deck, that can consider it. Maybe because we still have access to Herald of Nature, that sort of Druid could technically come back, although most of the tools for it, excuse me, have disappeared. So I can't imagine this is seeing play, but maybe a hyper aggro deck could run it where they don't care about losing the health as much as something else. Next we have Doomkin. 6 mana 3/4 Battlecry, take 1 of your opponent's empty mana crystals. So very powerful effect. It's ramp for Warlock as well as Druid, although it seems a bit stronger in Druid because you can ramp towards your ramp and get it going a lot quicker. So you do become kind of like 2 mana ahead of your opponent, and you actually become 2 mana ahead of your opponent for longer than you do compared to something like Nourish. Because Nourish, you get capped at 10, and then suddenly your opponent starts catching up. But for this one, you're at 2 ahead for a little bit longer because you guys are a bit slower to get to the cap. Is it a good card? Well, Ram Druid doesn't have great catch-up tools for swinging the board back, which is a bit of a problem. If you ramp and then you play this, yeah, you slow down your opponent's mana, but if they have a board, you haven't really slowed down their board at all. And you're playing 6 mana for a 3/4, so not affecting it that much in that sense. And you're only ramping 1 compared to Nourish, so if you did have like a big Anubrakan or something in your hand, maybe you can't even do that after the Doomkin because you haven't ramped enough compared to playing Nourish. So some downsides for sure, but what are the upsides? Well, Widowbloom Seedsman curves pretty nicely into it. If you're play Season 4, you go to 6 mana, so you can immediately play a Doomkin. And that's a pretty good curve. You get a body with it compared to Nourish, which is good too. So that curve's nice. It might actually mean you don't need to run Nourish. If this new card is better than Nourish, you don't really need to run Nourish anymore. Because you could do Seedsman and get Innovate from Seedsman. So even if you go Coin Seedsman, then you can Innovate your Doomkins and go from that way. And it'll slow your opponent down a little bit more than the Nourish will. One downside really for Druid right now is they don't actually need to ramp that much. A lot of their power plays are 5 mana anyway. The Flower Child is a card you really want to be playing and drawing your top end and discounting it. So often it's not even that beneficial to ramp beyond 5 mana. If you have the choice between Nourish and Flower Child, oftentimes it's just better to play the Flower Child anyway. So the need for ramping isn't really there as much. I'm not sure on this card. I think it could be decent. Could be decent. Like the nut curve is very strong. It's just Druid lacks a bit of recovery against aggro sometimes. What's more is this is kind of useless at 10 mana. Similar to how Wild Growth is kind of useless at 10 mana. This one is also because your opponent and you are at 10 mana. Doesn't really do too much. If you've ramped already to get to 10 mana quicker, maybe it'll do something to your opponent. I could see this being decent, for sure. I won't write it off. For Warlock, I feel like you're just not going to play it though. Alright, next up we got Funnel Cake. This is for Priest and Druid. 1 mana, restore 3 health to the minion and its neighbors. For each one overhealed, refresh a mana crystal. This one, I think, is really quite good, actually. One thing to note on this card that might not be immediately obvious is that you don't have to do it to your own minions. You can do it to your opponents too. So if you're against an aggro deck, they have 3 minions on board. You could just cast this on theirs and then you're immediately refreshing 3 mana. So you gain plus 2 mana from this, which is quite powerful, even for like a ramp druid. You could do like conceivably ramp plus Funnel Cake on their minions plus, you know, 3 mana left to do something else. Quite strong sometimes. For Priest, the Overheal deck, I think there might be something there. This card is a massive enabler for it. They actually have some decent Overheal cards, but what they're lacking right now are healing effects to make them work. Like this one is pretty decent. The Heartthrob is very, very strong. With this effect, Heartthrob plus that, summon a random 3-drop, and then you can chain all like your other overheal effects going very, very nicely. Plus this refresh is quite nice if you're playing potentially Valish in your deck, get more spells in, then refresh again. Very, very nice with Handmaiden because it activates the Handmaiden and gives you perhaps the mana to actually play the Handmaiden too. And I imagine you will be playing that in your deck. So could definitely see this Overheal Priest taking off. And I think also Druid maybe can make some use of this card too. I think it's just a really good card. Well, it requires maybe a bit of experimentation to see exactly where it fits in a deck. But to me, it's hard to see this not being good. Next we have Fanboy. 2 mana, 2/2, choose one, give a friendly minion plus 2 attack and rush, or plus 2 health and lifesteal. This is Priest and Druid. So you can do some fancy combos with like Pyromancer to get lifesteal and things, and Druid and things like that. Maybe even combo with Funnel Cake and do lots of nice stuff that way. Sure. It's a very complicated way to gain lifesteal and healing effects. Requires a lot of cards, a lot of card draw, and a lot of deck slots. Maybe maybe, but I think in general, just like probably not going to be seeing much play. Like, you kind of need minions to stick on board to get an effect from this. I mean, it's all right with druids. Early beast plays maybe. They tend to stay on board a little bit. You can give them +2 attack or +2 health. It's fine. And maybe get some trades. It could be like okay. But if you're playing all that early game beast stuff and you're playing like the pyromancer stuff, I just don't see it all in one deck. But maybe this is fine. Like giving Underkings and stuff lifesteal kind of good. Giving rush to maybe your 5 drops in druid also fine. Could see it in like a death rattle deck that doesn't run Master Reveler also. Giving this rush maybe also fine. So it becomes a bit awkward for finale. I'm not sure. It seems just like an okay card that probably doesn't find a home as a slam dunk in most decks. But maybe you just need the healing a little bit too much in Druid that they could consider running this. I don't think Priest wants to run it particularly. Next we have Costume Singer, which is Mage and Hunter. 1 mana, at the end of your turn, draw a secret. 1 mana, 2/1. So this is like a better Peasant as long as you're running secrets. You're guaranteed to get 1 draw. You need to be running a lot of secrets though. For Hunter, there's not much secret payoffs, but they do have access to a couple of good Hunter secrets. Bees, I think, is pretty good. Zombies, that is. Pretty good secret. The new secret they got also might be playable, so you could see a package of 2 zombies and 2 of the new secret, and then 2 of Costume Singer, and that's just like a decent value package for Hunter. I think that's pretty reasonable. For Mage, the secrets are a bit stronger, and they also have a lot more secret synergy, so for Secret Mage, this is definitely a big boost. It's just a really good card. Good value. 1 drop. Enables your 3 mana plays and things like that. Also, the curves are really good with Costume Singer and this neutral 2-drop Anonymous Informant. Very, very good curve. 1 drop into 2 drop. That's a bit better in Mage too. So I imagine this is going to be quite a good card. It's just whether Hunter wants to run it, I'm not sure, and whether Secret Mage as a whole is strong enough. But definitely a big boost to both archetypes. Next, Star Power. 5 mana, deal 5 damage to random enemy minion. Repeat this with 1 less damage. This is a bit of a weird card. It's just kind of a reprint. We're going to 5 for Shell Shot, which has not been a good card. I mean, Hunter gets access to this too, so they have both Shell Shot and Star Power in their class. It is an arcane spell, which has some synergies between Hunter and Mage. Hunter can obviously buff it with their spell power synergies that they got. I think it is a bit better than Shell Shot because it's just more likely to clear off a big board. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's quite a lot. 15 to a board compared to Shell Shot, which is only going to be 6 to a board. So it kind of scales up quite a bit better. I think it's like a decent control tool, maybe. Maybe even Hunter could run it. Like a slower Hunter deck, maybe Big Hunter. It's honestly kind of fine. For Mage, it's kind of decent with the keyboard as well. And Mage doesn't actually have really good hard removal, or AoEs for that matter, right now. So this might fill a hole. Like, they have Blizzard to freeze a board, they have Death Board, which works against small boards. But like for medium-sized boards or big boards, they don't really have much that affects it. So this could certainly help them in terms of dealing with boards. It's of course a bit random where the damage lands. Might not clear up everything you want. but I think it's probably okay, this card. Next we have Remix Dispenser Bot. Format, gain an extra effect to your hand that changes each turn. Mech. You got gain 2 frost spells into your hand, 2 random mechs, 2 coins, 2 random mage secrets, and it's random which one of these you're going to be offered when you draw this card. It changes every turn. Honestly, they're all kind of bad, I think. I don't see this card seeing play. Get 2 coins might be the best one for most matchups. Something like getting 2 random mechs is just going to be really, really slow most of the time. I mean, you could argue you want to go infinite, but I don't think it's going to actually generate itself. 2 random frost spells. There's a lot of frost spells for mage. Varying use. 2 random mage secrets is like very slow. I just don't see this scene play. Mage actually has so much value already now. They don't need this effect, and it's too expensive, I think. Just really, even in a dedicated mech deck, I don't think this is particularly good. We'll pass. Alright, next we have Fiddlefire M. 3 mana, 3/2 demon. Battlecry, add a random fire, mage, and fire warlock spell to your hand. Kind of good value until you look at what the fire spells actually are. For mage, they're like all very mediocre for the most part. Some have varying uses. Like you can get burn pretty often. And for warlock, terrible, I would say. And this one's like fine. Not great cards to get. 3 mana, 3/2 gets a decent amount of value. You already have access in mage to a card that does similar. Arc Splitter, which gives you better cards, I would say. This is on Death Route instead of Battlecry, so there's some arguments there. Maybe in an Energy Shaper deck you can consider running this card to like get you more spells in hand, and then you flip it with Energy Shaper. Don't know if it's necessary to do that. It is a demon which mage doesn't have access to otherwise, so you can always find yourself one amalgam band if you want to go down that route as well. If you're playing a menagerie mage, but don't think we're going down that route. I can't imagine this is going to be that good just because the spell pool's really awful, even though it is, you know, 3/2 with add 2 cards to your hand is pretty good value. Next we have Reverberations. 3 mana, summon a copy of a minion. Each one dies after taking damage. So you can use this on your opponent's minions, interestingly, and ping them, no matter what size it is. So it kind of works a bit like a polymorph in that sense, if you need to deal with a big minion, if you're playing mage. There is some maybe combo potential with this. For mage, you could maybe combo with Egwin or Vexalis, and for warlock, copying the slime makes some sense, but also maybe you could go for a Mindlock approach again with Devourer of Souls. There is some potential here. This is a shadow spell as well, interestingly, so for warlock you could set it up with perhaps a Shadowborn, reduce the cost of the highest cost shadow spell in your hand by 3 to make it 0 mana, potentially. And then you can do some stuff like mine plus this thing, and then copy this thing, kill off your board, and then the mines are going to be triggering many times. So who knows, maybe some brainiacs can figure out a Mindlock deck and bring that back with this card. But general use, it's like fine. Maybe an okay discover. Really kind of just a combo card. Alright, next we have Dance Floor for Paladin. 2 mana, give your minions rush. 2 charges. This is a location, a new location. Now, I saw a lot of people on Vicious Syndicate Discord going a bit crazy over this card, thinking it was turbo nuts for Pure Paladin, because what's Pure Paladin's weakness? Well, when they get off the board, it's really hard to come back on the board, so this maybe allows you to do that. But I didn't really like the card in Pure Pally, personally, just because Pure Pally just wants to be playing out stats every turn, and this isn't stats. It is good on like 1 turn, I think, for Pure Pally, and that is the turn when you're Light Razor costing 0. But it's 2 mana giving them rush. It's not always necessary to give them rush. They have taunt already, so they do kind of affect the board regardless. But this kind of card is going to be completely dead, I would say, against like a control deck. Priest, for instance, or Blood Decay. He's just not really going to need to give your minions rush against them. So you're going to have this card, and it's going to be in your hand at a lot of matchups, even against aggressive decks. And you're going to have other plays that you can do, and this. And I think you're going to probably pick the other plays most of the time. And this card's not going to do too much. What's more is I think Pure Pally might go in a different direction with the introduction of the kind of Doomhammer weapon that we're going to get to soon. So there's a lot less reason for them to need to give their minions rush if they're going to rely a bit more on off-board damage for their late game. So I don't think this is going to be that good in Pure Pally. Maybe you could run it as a one-off, or maybe the Light Rays having rush is too good of a turn to pass up. But I'm not seeing it. What this will be good in, however, I think is Big Paladin. I think another boost, we saw already a card boosting Big Paladin, but I think this one will help them as well. Big Paladin, again, doesn't do too much early on. That's that important. So they do have the time to play a Dance Floor instead of doing other plays. So it's good for a couple of reasons. If you're lucky enough to get the Kangor, giving this rush is very, very strong. Immediately kill it off. Get the lifesteal effect. Chi out your big boy. It's going to be really strong. But also, lead dancer becomes a lot better as well. You can give this rush and immediately summon a minion and trade something, and that's just really quite nice. So a couple of boons. Also, muster for battle. Maybe give that rush too. Can help it. And I think the main factor is that Big Paladin can afford to play this early on because they don't have really a lot of other plays that they really want to be doing. Pure Paladin, not so much in my opinion. Next we have Jukebox Totem, a new totem and a mech. 2 mana 0/4 at the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Silverhand Recruit. So Shaman gets access to dudes. This is a mech and a totem. So if you're playing a Menagerie deck, you somewhat care about this. Also, if you're playing Purator, there are no other totems, so Purator is going to draw extra cards if you're running these in your deck. I think this is actually a pretty good card. Primal Fin Totem in the past was actually kind of decent, and that was a 0/3, which basically had the same effect. 4 health is a lot harder to remove than 3. We have power crept the game a bit since then, so I can't imagine it's going to be massively stronger than Primal Fin was back then, but Primal Fin was playable, and I imagine this is playable too. Obviously in Totem Shaman, they want to be probably running this card. It's just another good turn 2 play outside of the Chisel. Coin this on turn 1. It's not getting removed. You're going to get a decent amount of value out of it. A couple of extra 1/1s. You're going to get board control that way. Might help your Infuse if you're running Infuse cards too. It helps Flame Tongue Totem a lot. Just being able to spread wide for Flame Tongue is really, really strong. So maybe Totem Shaman drops Party Favor Totems in favor of this, and then they're a bit happier to draw Flame Tongue Totem because of it, just because they're going to have that wide board state. I think it's generally okay. And for pure paladin, I think they actually might consider running this, particularly if they're the dude version. They'll definitely run it. But maybe even the non-dude versions too. Like I was saying, for infuse, it might help a card like Buffet Biggin with its infuse requirement. So this is a bit better of a card perhaps if you're running the totem in your deck. And it's very good with Warhorse Trainer. Summon a dude, follow up with this. Every turn summon another dude. Protects the trainer, gets you ahead more on board. Seems pretty nice. But even in not the dedicated dude version of the deck, I think this can still be kind of strong. Just because it's just a good tempo 2-drop for pure pally, and it's a good target for buffs. This thing, it's got a lot of health, it's sticky, so you're kind of likely to land this. Also, Disco Maul, I guess, or Hand of a Doll, that sort of thing. Pretty likely to stick around either the dude or the totem itself. So yeah, I think it's a solid card. I imagine this will see play. Next we got Horn of the Windlord. I was just mentioning this card. 6 mana, 3/4, Wind Fury. Whenever your hero attacks a minion, set its stats to 3/3. So as a control tool, you can kill a big thing. 2 big things, in fact, on the same turn. Take 6 damage to do so, but pretty good. But the big thing is this is a really good off-board finisher, especially for Paladin. Not so much for Shaman, because weirdly enough, they've lost their attack buff effects, like Rock Biter weapon. But for Paladin, they have access to them. And a big one is Feast and Famine. Give your hero +3 attack this turn and lifesteal. So 6 attack twice with lifesteal, 12 healing whilst doing a lot of face damage with this thing. Pretty nice top end for pure Paladin, I think. And I can imagine seeing pure Paladin work with a deck with this as their finisher. Probably still run Countess, but you don't need to necessarily run some of the other board buffs, spells and things like that to finish the game anymore. You just need to equip this weapon, spam some Feast and Famines, and some maybe for Kel'Thuzos as well. And then you've got your finisher there. And in slower matchups, that's going to be very nice because against like a Blood Decay and things, you kind of before always had to stick a board and then try and finish off with buffs like with the Disco Maul and things. But now you just need to do enough early chip damage and then finish with this weapon, which is pretty nice. And for aggressive matchups, when you lose the board as pure Paladin, you're done, pretty much. But now you just need that early chip damage, and then you can just finish the game with 1 or 2 of these weapons. This weapon also works really well, I think, with Anachronos, because if you equip this weapon and push face damage, you've completely abandoned board. So what does your opponent do? Maybe they play some taunts, maybe they just fill up on board and try and race you. Well, you can then follow up with Anachronos and poof the board away and continue doing face damage. I think that'll be a pretty strong finisher. After that, we've got Deafen. 1 mana, silence a minion combo, also deal 2 damage to it. This is for Rogue and Priest. So I think this is alright, this minion spell. The main strength of this really is an egg killer. This destroys eggs. Now if you saw the last review, I was kind of hot on an egg deck with double death rattle triggers and things like that. Like Foul Eggs, 2 health. Nerubian Egg, 2 health. This mega hard counters it because it not only silences it, but also kills it. Yeah. And a lot of decks right now use Foul Egg as sticky 1-drop and put buffs on it for aggression. So this is quite a hard counter to it. Priest Orgy has access to a very good silence effect in Shard of the Narrow. So maybe you're more likely to see this in Rogue. I think it's pretty decent. As long as aggressive decks are still running egg and things, I think Rogue will definitely consider running this. It's like a cheap card. It's nice. Can definitely see it. Kind of reminds me a bit of Brain Freeze, which ended up being quite a good card in Rogue. Alright, next we've got Plagiarizer. 3 mana 4/3 pirate. Get a copy of the top card of your opponent's deck. Is a pirate? I guess this is a counter to From the Depths, but yeah. Don't know if this is that good. Even in a dedicated pirate rogue deck, it's just like, it's not really what they want. They actually already have kind of a lot of value. They want kind of stickier pirate, maybe, or a cheaper pirate instead. 3 mana for 4/3 was a bit low tempo, even though you get some value out of it. Not sure it's what they want. Priest, maybe for a Thief Priest deck, they could consider running this as a 3-drop. Kind of reasonable. But overall, just an okay minion. I don't think it's going to be particularly strong. For Priest, again, we've got Ambient Lightspawn. 4 mana 3/4 Elemental Finale, and Overheal, give it another random friendly minion +2/+2. Now, I think this is actually going to be a pretty good card. In the Overheal Priest, we've seen like some cards already in there starting to come together, and I think this is going to be something that's going to be pretty strong in securing your board and maybe making your board do a bit more lethal damage and getting the stats a bit out of control. One thing Priest has access to is Love Everlasting. Your first spell each turn costs 2 less. Lasts until you don't play a spell on your turn. So if you set up with that, you could finale this on 4, and then follow up with the refresh spell, the funnel cake, straight away, which is overhealing and buffing your things up like that. Kind of reasonable. Yeah. And if you've got like location set up too, there's another good way. The fan club, you've got this as well. There's lots of ways to make use of these buffs. And I mean, on its own, if you have another minion on the board, 3/4 +2/+2 is kind of like Houndmaster from old, which was sometimes pretty good. I think this is a good card, and I'm kind of excited to try Overheal Priest. I think they got the most support out of any archetype this mini set, so hopefully it ends up being a new deck. We can hope anyway, but it looks good to me. One hit wonder, 2 mana, 2/1 for Rogue. Rush, combo, gain poisonous. This could be okay. It's 2 mana, remove a minion, which is fine. I'd say pretty good. You can't like discount it with prep, which you could for like sap and things like that in Rogue in the past. Not got any synergy with Shadow Step, so would a Miracle Rogue want to run this card? Well, maybe meta dependent. If you're facing a lot of mirrors, maybe you'd want to run this to kill your opponent's big minions. Or if there's other big decks in the meta, potentially you could consider running this card too. It's really 2 mana killer guy, which is kind of fine. You do need to combo it, which I'm not going to be able to do all the time. It's like a good minion, but I just don't know if they're actually going to run it. You know? That's my issue with the card. It's just, it's hard to see this actually being played and it necessary to be played. Like, Rogue's removal is actually pretty good for the most part. Big minions, they kind of miss it a little bit, but they can use the concoctions for that. Next we have Shaman, 3 mana, 3/2 remix Totem Carver. Gain an extra effect in your hand that changes each turn. So what can you get? Loud Totem Carver, get a Stereo Totem, get a Manaside Totem, Flame Tongue Totem, or the new Jukebox Totem, which summons the dudes. So kind of a decent amount of stats for a 3-drop. 3/2 plus a 2/3 mana totem. You can argue Manaside Totem shouldn't really be 3 mana. So really adding kind of like a 2 mana totem to the board. So 3/2 plus a 2-drop for 3. Pretty reasonable. For Totem Shaman, they probably want to be running this card. Just because it's like a decent amount of stats for one card. And most of them, the totems are useful. The Flame Tongue Totem is slightly awkward because the totem carver is going to get a bit in the way. So in terms of like pushing face damage, you can't really do it. For minion trades, you kind of have to trade from one side of the board only. So it becomes a little bit awkward in that sense. But the other options all seem pretty reasonable. I'd say it's solid. Not crazy good. We've come a long way since this card was broken back in the day when it summoned big boys. There's no chance to summon a Totem Golem though, which is a bit sad. Jam Session. This is a Shaman and Warrior card. Give a friendly minion +3/+3 damage. Deal 1 damage to all other minions. Overload 1 and fire. So obviously fits very, very nicely into Enraged Warrior. They care about fire spells. They care about buffing their board. They care about damaging their other minions for the weapon. So pretty nice in that sense. They also run Egg in that deck. And that's a good target for Jam Session. So pretty solid in that. Imagine it will see some play. For Shaman, it's not as good, clearly. But it might still be reasonable. +3/+3 for 2 mana is a good buff. And dealing 1 damage to other minions is going to be useful. You do play a lot of board as Shaman a lot of the time, so it might damage your own board. So gotta keep that into consideration. But you do have a heal totem sometimes as well. You're obviously not going to be playing this in a deck which spreads wide with loads of tokens, where the effect's going to hurt you too much. But I can see this card seeing playing Shaman too. It is Overload, so maybe with an Overload Shaman, it could be decent. With Inza, discounting this to 1 mana, you can get a lot more use out of it. That's for sure, and it's quite high tempo. Cute combo you can do with it is combo it with Radiance of Ashara, sorry. Fire spell damage +2, so the spell is actually going to deal 3 damage to all other minions. So kind of a board clear, plus you get to buff your dude up. Kind of a neat combo. And we have Backstage Bouncer, 4 mana, 4/5. Taunt, Battlecry, transform a friendly minion into a copy of this. 4 mana, 4/5 beast. So Yeti, mega power crept by this point. Also got Taunt. This is quite a lot of stats. It's going to be in Shaman a bit easier to land this because you have access to Chisel and totems and things like that. For Warrior, at least Enraged Warrior archetype or Menagerie Warrior archetype, don't go as wide with smaller things as much, but you do have access to a few more hand buffs. So in Warrior, you might end up with 2 big boys. In Shaman, you might end up with this on 4 being active and buffing your other guy a little bit more often. But it just seems kind of like a solid card in both archetypes. It's not super interesting, it's just a load of stats for 4, but even the likes of Totem Shaman might want to consider playing this card, even though it's not a totem, just because the stat increase to your board might be just super, super large. And finally we have Phanotum, Lord of the Opera, 30 mana, 15/15, Taunt Lifesteal. This card's cost is equal to the amount of cards in your deck. So you need, for this to be even playable, 10 or fewer cards in your deck. Not great. Also, I'm not sure how this works with Thaddeus, which text supersedes the other one. So is this going to be cheap with Thaddeus, or is it still going to be expensive? I'm not even sure. One combo you can do this with is the Jailer. You can Jailer, destroy your deck, and then this is going to be 0 mana. So slamming down Jailer plus 15/15, lifesteal is pretty good. It's not going to have the taunt anymore, but for recovery, I mean, you're going to be absolutely fine in terms of pushing face damage and healing and stuff, as long as they don't have the hard removal. But I mean, most matchups, like, this is not gonna be a playable card. And in the slower matchups where you finally do get to the bottom of your deck, maybe they're just gonna have the hard removal for this. Hard to say. If that matters that much. I mean, it is just another threat, so they might run out. Yeah. It's probably not that good, just because it's unplayable in most matchups. The Jailer combo is kind of cute, but without a way to get to the Jailer safely, and with plenty of board clears and things available from other decks, I'm not sure that combo is that particularly strong. But 30 mana card, kind of funny. That's all the cards, guys. Let me know if you've got any cool combos you want to talk about that I might have missed in this video. It was a lot to get through, so I appreciate it if any of you stuck around to the end of this. We're going to be testing out the mini set tomorrow when it releases on stream, so be sure to join us there. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you guys in the next video.